A force is basically a push or a pull on an object, and all forces can be categorized into one of two different things: contact forces and non-contact forces. The difference is, well, with a contact force, the thing that's exerting the force on the object has to be physically touching it, whereas for a non-contact force, it doesn't have to be physically touching it. So, for example, if I wanted to push something, I would have to physically touch it in order to push it. If I'm not touching something, there's no way I can push it. So that means me pushing something is an example of a contact force. An example of a non-contact force could be gravity. So I've got this soft toy here and the earth is pulling it down. Now the earth is not touching this toy right now, but when I let go of it, it pulls it down sure enough. That means gravity is a non-contact force because it's exerting a force on that object even without touching it physically. Let's go through a few more contact forces. Okay, one example is tension. This is when anything is sort of being stretched a little bit. So for example, a piece of rope holding something up. Tension is the force that we say is in that rope, and well, each individual little bit of rope is touching the rest of the rope. All the particles are touching and pulling on each other quite physically, so tension is indeed a contact force. A reaction force is what we call it when any surface pushes back up against gravity against something. So for example, if I put an object on a table, then that reaction force is pushing up on the object against gravity. But that force is only there while the object is touching the table. If I removed the table, the thing would fall because there's no upwards reaction force. If I held it above the table, there's no reaction force, it would fall down to the table. Friction is another example of a contact force. That's when two things rub against each other and the friction will kind of oppose the motion that's happening. And air resistance is actually a type of friction. You might think, oh, well, with air resistance, nothing's really touching me. But in actual fact, the air particles are causing friction against the object that's moving. So whether it's a car or you riding your bike down the road, when you feel that wind in your face, that's actually the air particles touching you. So air resistance, drag, is a type of contact force. Okay, let's go through a couple of more examples of non-contact forces. There aren't that many, but magnetism is a non-contact force. So magnets will attract or repel each other, and they don't necessarily have to be touching in order for that force to be felt. You've probably noticed this if you've ever played with fridge magnets. And the electrostatic force is very, very similar. This is where we say things like two positive charges will repel, a positive and a negative charge will attract. That attraction and repulsion exists even without these charged particles touching each other. So the electrostatic force is another example of a non-contact force. Okay, so go out into the world now, see if you can spot some forces around and work out whether they are contact or non-contact forces.